Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
It's that time again. Welcome back, everybody, for episode 25 of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Tonight is February 18th, 2019, and in this episode, we are going to be concluding our discussion of Brandon Sanderson's novella, The Emperor's Soul. I am Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my historic co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hello. It's fun to be back together. I love recording this show. So,
It's fun.
And it's just fun to chat with y'all and geek out about Brandon Sanderson.
That's good. It'd be really bad if you're like, I'm kind of just done with you people.
I don't say everything that enters my mind, Jordan.
Oh, okay.
I mean, okay, so for those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, just as a reminder, you can join our
Live
chat. Interact with us directly via live chat on www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. We record episodes of the podcast every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So please join us, take an active part of the discussion, keep us company. We don't want to feel lonely. We like having you here. So for those of you who come, we love it. Thanks for coming. And for those of you who don't, join us. It'll be fun.
Godless Rebel needs more friends.
Jordan, you're not supposed to tell him that Godless Rebel's the only one in chat right now.
Why do you think he's godless?
So, anyway, we do have something exciting to say. Guess what it's time for, guys? It's time for another giveaway.
I was going to guess breakfast.
No.
It's a little late for
the
that.
opposite of that time. So this month, we're going to be giving away one of our Sandersonian Institute patches. Amy has been so kind as to actually make these for us. And so we're going to be doing, it's going to be the same process as the past. Apparently, Rosie is very, very affectionate right now.
She's like, oh my goodness. She's like harassing me. Like, do you need to go out? What's the deal? Okay, I need to go. I need to harass my husband for a second to tell him to let the dog out. So I think that's the problem because she's really needy. So
okay, she's just really excited about this giveaway. So keep an eye on our social media for an official announcement in the next day or two. And just it's going to work the same way as it has in the past. To enter, you want to tag somebody else who loves the Cosmere in the post that we're going to have up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can enter up to 3 times. So do that, and you could be the owner of a fancy Sandersonian Institute patch.
And it's very stylish.
Yeah, it is very stylish. The design is a Jordan Splice original.
It is.
And you could be styling around with one of those on a backpack, on a shirt, on a jacket, whatever you want to put a patch on. We're not going to judge. So, yeah.
Scarf. Scarf could also be used.
A scarf, as Amy just displayed, actually.
This is actually a dog bandana, but yes.
Also known as a dog scarf.
Yes, it's a dog scarf.
You can put the collar through. That's what I do for Rosie. Cosmere puppy, as she's known. So,
awesome.
And we can also, there is the option of you can sew it on, or I can put something on that you can iron it on if you want instead. So
it's
more importantly, did the
customizable.
Cosmere puppy get relief?
I hope so. I got her outside, and my husband's going to let her back in.
I know everyone will be wanting to know if we don't.
We all hope so, Amy. We all hope so.
I hope so. So, yeah, she's usually not that pushy, like, because she's shy about telling us she needs to go, so we put a bell on the door, so she
shy?
rings the bell. Yes. So, anyway, so I was just like, it's been a long time since she's gotten that needy with me, and I'm like, what is wrong? I mean, I'm throwing your ball, and she's like, I know, I need your attention now.
Oh,
So, yeah.
boy. Well, Now, in addition to our monthly giveaway, which we started, guys, we're coming up on a landmark. Mm-hmm. 1 month from today will be our 1-year anniversary show. We have been talking and making this crazy podcast for a year.
That's all sorts of crazy.
How awesome is that? And it's been fun to watch the audience grow. I think for that first podcast, over the course of the next 2 weeks, we had like 18 downloads, and we're getting quite a bit more than that. So that's kind of awesome. But for our 1-year anniversary, we decided we want to celebrate, and we want you to be part of that celebration. So on March 18th, 1 month from tonight, we are going to have a patron call-in show. This is a show where our patrons, the people who are signed up on Patreon, will be able to actually call in and chat with us. To do so, our patrons are going to need to have an active Discord account. We will have a room set up on our Discord server where our patrons can let us know that they've got something on their mind, and then we'll pull them into a call. When you call in, you can talk about the show. You can talk about the Cosmere. You can just shoot the breeze with us for a few minutes and let us know, let us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah. We don't know maybe the exact mechanics of how we'll figure that out, but I'm going to be poking the heads of some people who have done these things before to make sure that we hopefully have less technical issues than we've had in the past.
Yeah. So we've got some ideas. So if you want to join in with that, of course, head on over to Patreon and become a patron. For those of our people who are already patrons, get prepared just to call in, chat with us. Again, that will be at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, in 4 weeks on Monday, March 18th, 2019. So get ready, and we would love to talk with you.
Cool.
Okay.
Anything else to add about that, guys?
I guess I would just say just make sure you keep it, PG.
Of course. Yeah. This is a family show, so we're
Who do you think you are, Seth?
Anyway.
So that's a callback.
So yeah, those are our two big announcements. We've got another announcement coming up towards the end of the podcast, so keep listening. And beyond that, I think we're ready to sort of dive in. So last week we kind of talked through a lot of the ideas and themes and geeked out about the magic system and about how Brandon styled it. This week, it might get a little bit deeper just because we're going to start looking at some of the actual themes that Brandon explores. This is a shorter piece, and it's very, very plot light, but there's a lot of stuff, like a lot of heavy questions, really, that Brandon discusses. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really philosophical.
We're going to exercise Amy and I are going to exercise our English major muscles, and Jordan's going to spout philosophy, so...
We'll see how I do. I'm kind of rusty.
So do we want to take a look at some of the characters, or do we want to just dive into the deep end and, want to start off with what is art and what is truth?
Those are light questions right there, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I could go either way if we wanted to try and go into characters. But, I mean, it feels like we sort of went over characters a little bit last time.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a very, very short cast of characters. There's a few that we didn't mention. So, we'll just start off. We've got Wan Shailu, or Shai as we know her. And apparently Brandon refers to her as Shay, but we still love him. So then we have Gautona, who is our elderly, grandfatherly character. We've got Frava, who is probably the closest thing we have to a villain in this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the Blood Sealer, but he's working for Frava, kind of.
I feel the head guard was the bigger villain of the story, because he was the one who's more openly antagonistic.
Yeah, Zoo was probably the other. He's our
Captain
other
Zoo.
antagonist, who he basically had his pride injured, and he wants blood to pay for it.
And then he got his body injured.
And then we have Emperor Ashravan, who, for the majority of the story, is a vegetable. And then, but he's also kind of the main character over the course of it, because we're looking into him and who he is.
It's a very interesting character with him, because he's a character in retrospect.
Yeah. It's a lot of talk about him and you learn about him, and then
it's
you finally
very
meet him, and it's really close to the end,
We just barely get him on screen, just for a very little bit. And then
it's when all the high tension is going on, so you're already like, at least for me, I was already amped up and like, oh, she's got to get out, and then it's, we got to meet Ashravan, and then she's got to get out, and, you know. And I'm like, I want her to kick butt now, come on, get to the kick butt part. So.
Right.
That was just fun. Warrior
and then
Shy.
We've got the unnamed Bloodsealer, who's creepy as all get out. And then we find out that he's young.
He makes me think of like Voldemort with the way she describes him.
Although from the description, it almost sounds like that's sort of a racial characteristic of them.
Yeah, that's probably true. But it's probably the fact that I'm Caucasian coming out, and I'm going, oh, so if they're really white, then obviously they're Voldemort, not
No, if they're really white, they look like me.
Yeah, my brain did not go there. Yeah, thank you, brain.
And then we have the Imperial Fool, who, as we have discussed, again, spoiler warning for those of you, if you don't realize that there's going to be spoilers in an episode about a specific book, then I can't help you.
What are you doing here?
But the Imperial Fool, as we know, is Hoyd. Again, he never shows up on screen, but he still has a profound impact on the story.
Yeah. You notice his presence in what happens.
So, with the magic system, again, what Shay is doing, I try for consistency. I've been saying Shy, and then I read Shay, and now I don't know what I'm saying. But I am actively admitting that this is a mistake, so hopefully people won't judge me too harshly for that. But in the magic system, basically they're rewriting the past. I think this is such a cool idea. Because you have all these stories about time travel, but this is so
another
interior.
Level to it almost,
it's inside. It's very, very localized because it's a specific object's identity. You're not even rewriting the actual past. You're just convincing the soul or spirit or mind or whatever cognitive representation of something that it is something else.
Well, and it's interesting because it doesn't affect anything else. It only affects that object.
Yeah,
like I've seen that concept a little bit like explored. There was an episode of Star Trek Voyager where this enemy had a time weapon that if it hits, it erases that object from all time, but that has consequences throughout time. This is the first time I've seen it where it's just this object, because in the hands of a less talented author, that would be it would break the story completely.
And I mean, it's not a permanent change, because if you break the seal on it, it goes back to what it was before.
Right.
So there's that element.
Well, because again, it's almost like it's not actually changing the past. It's convincing the object that its past is different than it was.
Yeah, it almost makes me think of Dollhouse a little bit, if you've seen that show. Like how...
Yeah, that's kind of interesting,
Yeah.
It's not a direct correlation, but I haven't seen too many shows where they tweak the timelines that are comparable, and that they don't tweak the timeline, but they convince their brain that, no, you actually did this or that or whatever else for Dollhouse.
Yeah. No, And so it's just sort of fascinating. And so that's why one of the themes because, again, so much of this book is just dialogue between Shai and Gautona. And one of the things they sort of talk about, is the concept of what makes a person who they are. Because that's what Shai is trying to find out as she is recreating from the ground up the Emperor's soul. Or actually, speaking romantically, we've got the physical, the cognitive, and the spiritual. So when you say soul, my first thought would go to the spiritual.
Yeah.
But from what I can tell, from what it seems like, what's missing is the cognitive. I think that because I feel like the spirit is what gives him.
We discussed that last time, where there was the possibility that what actually happened with Gaotona was his mind is what got destroyed.
Right.
All of the neurological, all the connections got snapped by the damage, and then the brain got put back together, but all of those connections were gone.
Because the soul, I think, is still there. Because that's sort of what gives the spark of life, I feel like.
Yeah, and his body functioned, it just didn't have any memories or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's my working theory, is that this isn't actually a forgery. It's it's clearly a forgery. That's what we call the magic system, but it's more just trying to approximate his brain, but it's still the substance that makes him is still there. But then I guess the question, what is a person? And that's a small question.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brandon only deals with small questions. He just never branches out enough.
It's very, very true. And so, what exactly, in y'all's opinion, what is it, particularly in this area, this world, what is it that makes a person who they are? Is a person just a combination of the experiences they've had? Is there an individual that's actually at play here? Because I think that individual is important, because when she's forging, she has to have something that is plausible. It has to be something that could have potentially happened. And
well, it's because if it's not, it gets too close to soul casting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and according to Brandon, it's also the farther away from reality it is, the more investiture it takes. Sort of like with Warbreaker, if you have something that already resembles something that's alive, having the cloak that's cut in the shape of a human,
cut in the shape of a person,
or a little straw
man, or whatever.
It requires fewer breaths, less investiture, and apparently, theoretically, you could completely forge yourself to be a completely different person with different powers. Apparently, you could technically forge somebody to become a Mistborn, but it would require a huge amount of investiture to be put in.
Well, I think it bears mentioning that the reason this works on this planet is because of Aeon Door, and it's readily available power source, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like you can channel more investiture through a seal. There's like a limited
there's
flow,
a set amount of flow, and you cannot exceed it, and you have to make sure that you've matched it exactly right for either the cognitive or the spiritual or the combination, and that's how it feels like if she found that right combination, and that's when she was able to get the seal to stick on Gaotona.
That's sort of the difference, or one of the differences between Elantrian magic or Aeon Door and forging is, it seems like with forging, you basically have your initial input, and that's it. While with Elantrian magic, you're literally carving a hole between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, essentially, and letting the door in, and you're channeling it into a specific area.
Pattern, and pattern, and that pattern dictates that it does such function.
But while with forgery, you have that initial stamp, turn, lock, and the investiture's sort of injected and then closed.
It's done. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it is done, because if that were the case, then they wouldn't need to reseal every so often.
So the way I almost see it is, you put the stamp in, you lock it in, and it's kind of like the investiture is kind of ingrained in that seal, and after 24 hours, it breaks down. The seal basically dissolves.
Are we just talking about the seal on Ashravan?
Specifically, we're talking about soul forging, as opposed to forging like a
vase,
an inanimate object. Yeah.
Okay, so like what she was doing with herself with her 5 essence stamps.
Right. So that's why you need to restamp after 24 hours. I feel like it's almost reality is pressing on the seal, and it breaks down after 24 hours. I don't think that there's a constant.
I think what's
infusion of investiture.
This is just my gut. I think given it enough time on an object, a seal might need a reseal, but we don't see any object that exists in a forged state for that long enough. I think people, because they are inherently more invested and resist it more, they need the restamping to sort of recharge the seal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that there's a person has more cognitive whatever, more yeah, I guess you said it better. I wasn't sure how to word it.
They are more heavily invested, and also humans are constantly changing.
Yeah, whereas a table is a table, and it doesn't really change unless something acts on it, and then it's been acted on. It doesn't change
and
itself.
That was the interesting thing about something, I think Shai, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be misremembering this. Didn't Shai mention that she left room in the seal for him to continue growing?
Yes. She programmed that in, basically.
So that he could learn and remember things.
Yeah.
Now, my thought, though, this is an interesting concept, something I sort of thought about as I was reading, is if he doesn't restamp himself in time and reverts, and then they restamp him after he's reverted for like 5 minutes, would he come back in the original state that she stamped him, or would he come back to the person that he was towards the end?
I don't know.
So if we're running with the theory that the reason he was gone was because he'd lost the neuron connections, like Amy was saying earlier, as he exists, he's forming more physical neuron connections.
Right.
I don't think those go away because the seal goes away, because that's not what her seal did anyway.
And that's sort of like I just blanked on what I was going to say, and it was completely amazing and insightful, and now you're missing out.
So going off of what Jordan just said about like his brain forming new neuron connections, or I hope I'm saying that right. Neural. Okay, knew I was close. That I think, in my mind, that he would remember things if they lapsed for 5 minutes or whatever. I don't know if they would hold for forever. Like, I could see them breaking down again if it went a long time without him getting stamped again. But I see if there was not a long lapse, I can see his brain sustaining that.
Right. Well, and she was talking about the concept of having a stack of papers and tracing over it over and over and over again to the point where he might not need to be stamped anymore after a long time.
I'd forgotten that, but that's right.
So
it's definitely the most romantically interesting of all the magic systems.
Realm, right?
Realmatically, not romantically.
I was like, wait, what? I did not remember romance in this one.
Yeah. That's the reason.
Didn't you pick up on the subtext between Shai and the bloodletter or whatever his name was?
Ew.
I was going to say Zoo.
Ew. Ew.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension between her and Zoo.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going the way that those people would hope.
But yeah, there's no.
Hollywood has taught me it will always go that direction.
I know, it's terrible.
Oh gosh.
So now that you have all heard about us talking neurology and romance and all the things we're very qualified for.
So now let's move on to the question of what gives art its value. What is art? No, we're not what is arting. I'm sorry. That is just
that's too much.
And I was not an art major, but no. What is it that gives art its value? Because they have a very interesting discussion about this, and you see two very different viewpoints. Because Gautona's talking about this was the work of a master. This was the work of, a work of a genius. And this is a work of great skill. Yeah. And Shai says, I made something that's absolutely identical. And it's hanging up in her office. What has been lost?
So the image is still there. The painting is still there. The original's gone. But the person who made the original said they wanted it gone. So she was fulfilling a contract that way. Right.
And it plays into the whole concept of humans are very, very sentimental creatures. Mm-hmm. They assign value to things based on where it came from or the circumstances under which it was created or and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys watched any episodes of like a Hoarders show or anything like that? People who hoard.
Of what?
Hoarding.
Oh, hoarders.
Oh, hoarders.
Hoarders, yeah.
Yeah, not horrors. That's a different thing.
Horrors, no. No,
I thought you said horror show. Like I was like, how did we get on hoarding? Okay.
No,
Hoarders.
so like, because you're saying sentimental value, and I've watched a few shows here and there just randomly when I'm like, I don't want to think right now, and like with people who are hoarders, and like it's amazing what people can attach meaning to, and you're sitting there going, that is a piece of trash. Why are you keeping it? And if you've got a huge mountain of trash in your house, you need to get rid of it because it's not healthy.
But this piece of trash is the one I picked up when I was walking home from the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what people can connect with and then like form that, and it's really hard to break it for people who have neurological conditions, which a lot of the people on these shows do. Anyway, but that was
right.
Random tangent that came to mind.
No, I actually think it's very applicable because in his world, connection matters. What people think about things matter to the identity of a thing. Mm-hmm. And so you ask the question, what gives art its value? In our current world, I'd say art has whatever value you assign to it. But
and it's going to vary on who is assigning that value to. Because I mean, random person who's an art critic would say, "Oh, well, these high-end whatevers or stuff," would say, "Oh, that's really high art," and then claim, and say it has all this value to it. Where someone else looks at it and goes, "You put a bunch of tires together or whatever, or you splash some paint on a wall. How is that art?" Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it really depends on which audience you're talking to and all of that.
The cynical side of me says art has its value. Its value is whatever someone's willing to pay for it, to quote my dad on things.
Yeah.
But it's in his world where there's these cognitive and spiritual realms, there's an additional layer. What gives it its value? Part of it is what value have people placed on it enough to where, what does it think its value is?
Yeah, how highly does it think of itself? How much does it feel like it matters?
Of course, if we're talking about... whose world are we talking about? Gautona's?
I'm talking about Brandon's.
Okay, Brandon. Okay, I was going to say, because Gautona doesn't believe in the realms.
No.
Yeah.
So
he believes in the suns.
He doesn't believe in realmantic theory. He considers it silly superstition.
Yeah.
The other thing is, when you're talking about with forgery, well, what Shay has done is she has literally changed something to the point that it thinks it is that object. And so you say, what does it think it is? Well, that's what forgery does, is it creates this new identity for it.
Yeah, this new identity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it makes sense that for Gautona, this would be very disconcerting. Mm-hmm. If you think art's value is placed in how masterful the strokes are, how perfect the composition is, and all sorts of terms that are very artsy.
And who made it and where it came from, that type of thing.
And then Shy comes and she can duplicate it stroke for stroke, proving that she knows how those strokes are made and that she can do it herself. But the only thing she lacks is the artistic creativity to make that specific painting. She can make a duplicate of it, and in that there is an art to that. Like I've seen people on DeviantArt who do those negative paintings where they paint something in perfect negative color and then they just throw it through a filter and it looks exactly like it should. Like that, there's art in duplication. It's
and then you have, like, for example, people who play these songs using a hard drive. They have a hard drive that loads at just the right frequencies and such that it actually recreates a song.
Nothing duplicates it better than the Zeusophone. Also known as using a Tesla coil to make music, which is the most metal thing I've ever seen.
Literally metal.
I know, right?
No, actually, it's funny. My in-laws actually showed me something called sax. Oh, what is it? It's like beat sax. Like, and it's this guy who does like beatboxing with a saxophone. That's crazy. I played the clarinet for like a very short period of my life in junior high, and that I don't even know how I did that at all. I cannot fathom making those sounds with the saxophone.
But yeah, the ability to recreate something like that in and of itself is its own type of art.
It's a big deal, yeah.
But I can see where Gaotone, it's concerning because she made a duplication of this guy's work but she doesn't have any of the creativity that goes along with it for that specific piece. It's a different type of creativity. And so for him, it's very disconcerting because if you can duplicate something, it by its nature, it lessens the value. If there's more of something.
But the thing is, she doesn't duplicate something. The only thing she duplicates is the style for things like the mural on the wall with the vines. She doesn't actually create or duplicate anything that he has made. She just duplicates his artistic sensibility almost.
The thing that I found most impressive about that specific painting, the one that's sitting in Fava's office.
Frava.
Yeah, sorry, I keep trying to make it fava beans.
Fava's a bean.
Yes. But the thing I find is the fact that she made two of them. B, she made sure there was just enough, like, quote unquote, wrong with one of them that they're like, we know which one's the fake now because.
So they fool the people who are the judges of the art. Yeah.
Which, if you've listened to Brandon talk on writing excuses, that sort of falls in line with one of the things that he talks about, where if you get just enough very, very specifically accurate, then they'll grant you leeway on the things. This is almost the exact opposite, where if you make one of them just off a little bit, then they'll forgive more on the one that's more accurate.
Well,
the other thing...
No, go ahead.
The other thing that I find kind of interesting about this, that can be applied to Brandon's sort of realm of art, is it's almost the argument of is fan fiction is that quality literature? And I have friends on both sides of this issue who will fight to the death, both sides. And I personally lean a little bit away from it, but I can understand the argument behind it because, honestly, as Brandon has said, when he did the Wheel of Time, when he finished the Wheel of Time, it was essentially the world's ultimate fan art or fanfic.
Fanfic, yeah. So have either of you written any fan fiction?
Yep.
Not since I was 11 or 12.
See, yep. I wrote it for quite a few years. I haven't written any for a while. But I did a lot, and it helped me work on my writing a lot. And I've read some really good fanfics out there, and it's been forever since I've done it. But so I lean towards it can be really good, but there's a lot of really not good out there.
I don't know what you're talking about. My Digimon fanfiction would destroy anything Brandon wrote.
And I'm not saying that, like, my fanfics that are out there, I'm not saying who I am out there, are amazing, but, like, I can see my growth through it as I went, and I collaborated with actually another writer too, and so it can be a good process of doing it too, to help you work on your artistry of it.
I'd say fan fiction's a perfectly legitimate form of art as long as you understand that A, you can't really make money off it, and B, you're missing out on part of the writing experience because you're not world building.
Also, the thing is, I know people who have created fan fiction to the point where if the author creates something else in the series that doesn't agree with their fan fiction, they get upset. And at that point, I think
you're a little too deep into it then.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, and that actually leads right into the next thing we were talking about, is who owns art once it's created? Who does the art belong to? And because, Gautona raises the argument that once the art has been released to the public and they've had their own sort of experiences with it, then it becomes theirs, and it is no longer the author's to destroy, or the authors or the artists or what have you.
So, this discussion has very interesting implications in this universe in particular, because ownership really matters when it comes to things like forgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to change a painting, you have to understand not only, like, how is this thing observed? And so there's the beginning stage where, as it's being created, it's clearly owned by the artist. No one else. If he gives it away, at that point, does he have any ownership over it?
Well, for example, George Lucas has sold the rights to Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it his anymore? I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem with the argument. Is the answer is both yes and no.
I mean, he did start it. It was his creation at the beginning.
He
but
built
now,
this universe
and someone else legally has the rights to create from there on. So,
I actually just watched an episode of Seinfeld today, where one of the characters one of the characters is writing an authorized autobiography. She's ghostwriting it for him, and she realizes his life is absolutely dull.
Oh,
but the guy is really, really rich, and he's fascinated by Kramer's life story, and so he buys all of Kramer's stories for his own. And so Kramer can no longer tell those stories because they didn't happen to him anymore.
They belong to rich guy.
They happened to this other guy. And it was just sort of a very interesting look at the same concept who does it belong to? Legally, it didn't belong to him, but he's still the one who actually has these experiences.
It's also a discussion Brandon has gotten into on Writing Excuses before, talking about canon and what happens to canon after the book is done, sort of thing. And so, like, I know this was it's a big deal with, like, like the Potterverse, because everyone wants to know, okay, what happens next? And she said a few things, and people are like, well, no, that doesn't agree with my understanding. And the question
with how I saw it and everything else.
Well, and the question is, if she's not writing about it, does she really have any more say over what it... This is another big one. This is Brandon has discussed. What does a book mean? And I've heard Brandon talk about it. And to Brandon has stated a book means whatever it means to you. Like, there isn't a right way to interpret it, because just because Brandon interprets it one way doesn't negate how someone else feels about it.
Yeah.
And so, because how someone interprets a reading can have a very different experience for them. And so in this way, Brandon sort of more agrees with Gautona in that it doesn't belong to the artist anymore once it's out there. Right. But at the same time, you say that, but only one of us has put a lot more work, blood, and sweat into what this quote unquote means.
Right. Now, Godless Rebel raises an interesting point in chat here. He says, I think it depends on the intention of why and to whom he gives it. It was a gift to a love interest, not a commissioned piece. And that's very interesting because, he did create this for a particular woman. He gave it to her.
And her children gave it away, right?
Her children, after she died, gave it to the Empire to raise their own prestige. So in that essence, while the image legally belonged to them, in some ways it could be interpreted that they stole it from him. Because it wasn't given to them. It was a thing that he shared with this love interest.
But at the same time, if the love interest left it to the children...
The love interest may not have left it to anybody. The love,
she may not have had a will. She may have just died, and
we don't know the answer to that question. I find it a more interesting conversation if she did leave it to the children.
But the thing is, why did she? And then there's the whole argument: did she leave it to them because she thought that they would appreciate? Was it a misplaced trust, or was it a? There's just.
Or had
so
she moved on
from
the artist, and so she didn't really have that connection to it anymore.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it so amazing. I love the conversation.
So there's also, we were talking about how, what is a book and how you interpret a book, and it reminds me of J.R.R. Tolkien and how there are so many people who write about it and say, oh, he's talking about how war is terrible and, deforestation and all these other things, and he's like, no, it's not about that at all. And even put it out in writing several times, and people still go and compare it to that.
That's like Mark Twain with Huckleberry Finn. I believe at the very beginning of the book, he says very, very specific, like not in, like before the actual book starts, he says, there is no deeper meaning behind this. Anyone who says there is deeper meaning behind this should be shot. And he just goes on this just overblown rant about it. And what is one of the most interpreted books out there? Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah. I was not always a fan of how my professors and teachers in school would interpret books and be like, oh, well, obviously it's these different themes. And there's like some books that I loathe now because they tried to pound the themes into my head so hard. And I'm sure lots of people love this book, but I loathe it with a passion. But it's like Their Eyes Were Watching God, I think is what it is, by Zora Neale Hurston. Yeah. I'm probably getting that wrong. I hate that. Right. I hate that book so much. And I think it's because I had to do a report on it, and I just thought, I did not like that book. So I'm not the biggest fan of this book obviously means this, and you have to say, and it's following these things. And so, yeah. And I think a big part of it is the discussion itself. What does it mean to you? Yeah. But there are so many different ways of interpreting that. That was one of the most frustrating things about getting into reading English. Is you have to for some of the classes you have to figure out what are they wanting me to interpret out of this class. Because if I don't give that answer, I don't get the grade, even though I think that thing is stupid, or I don't like it, or it doesn't mean that to me, or however.
This is why only a fool goes into the humanities.
There's no money.
Well, I wasn't bringing up that point, but, now that you've rubbed salt on that wound for yourself, I'm okay with this.
No.
I don't know. Brandon was an English major, and he's doing pretty well for himself.
Well, I'm not saying there's no money. I guess I did literally say those words, but I'm saying for the majority of English majors and a lot of humanities majors, you don't end up making money in that area. You go somewhere else.
You don't major in the humanities expecting to be rich.
To get a humanities job. Yeah, you expect to get something else.
Let me change that sentence for you, Bill. You shouldn't go into the humanities expecting that, but I think we all know a few people who kind of did.
Yeah, no names.
No, so yeah, my husband, he has an electrical engineering degree, but he does more programming than anything close to electrical engineering.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay, so going back to the question about what gives art its value, and is forgery art? There was one thing that I noticed as I was looking at it. The term forge has more than one meaning. There's the meaning that Gautona represents is to make something that's fake, to create an imitation. But the other meaning of to forge is to create something.
Yeah, like with the Greek god, is it Hephaestus?
Hephaestus.
I think it is. So I mean, yeah, that kind of forging, that is definitely art.
And the thing is, what Shai does is kind of both. Actually, what the Rememberers do,
that's pure forgery.
That's pure faking.
Yeah.
What Shai does is she creates. I mean, the things that are most important to her in her life are her soul stems. And the reason that those are so important to her are because those are things that she spent years crafting, and to create something like that, think about how deeply you have to look into yourself.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't be comfortable stamping myself.
More deeply than anyone probably is typically comfortable doing. Because another of the things that humans are really, really good at is lying to themselves. And to create a proper soul stamp like that, you can't. You have to be completely honest.
You have to lay your soul completely bare to yourself.
Completely bare. You have to look and see every single flaw within yourself, everything that you probably hate the most about yourself,
and how you got there.
I don't do that.
And what made you like that?
Have you? Do you guys write in journals or diaries or look back at anything like that for yourself?
No.
I'm really hit and miss at doing it, but I have good stints when I do it, and I've caught that as I go through, I'm like, yeah, I'm still making those same mistakes and those same flaws, and I realize I go through cycles where I do really good at getting better at it, and then I get lazy and slide again, and then I do it again and again.
You have now hit on the exact reason why I don't journal.
You don't want to see it in your own writing. They're going, yeah, you screwed up again.
No.
You did the thing.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that sounds horrible. Why would you do that to yourself?
Well, and
Minor.
right now I'm listening to a book that Jordan recommended talking about perfectionism. And that's exactly at the heart of it is you don't want to fail.
You haven't
don't
even
want
gotten
to
to the
see
part
how
yet
you
where he
failed.
brings up a hypothetical person named Bill.
Yes, I have.
Oh, you have?
Oh, yes.
Was that as weird for you as I thought it would be?
No, you gave me a heads up.
Okay.
No, actually, I think I have a touch of perfectionism, and it's
I've got
rough.
more than a touch.
I don't want to admit that I maybe have more than a touch, so I'm going to say I have a touch. But yeah, I've...
For those of you curious, the book is Do Over by John Acuff.
He's not giving us any money.
But we
Not
wouldn't mind
yet.
Jordan, this is not how you advertise. You
Let's
don't
see, we've
do the
advertised
advertising.
two different books in here, yeah, two at least. One with not
Oh,
glowing reviews.
he has more books that we could shill for.
Jordan,
And he needs to really hop on this. This is a train that's getting ready to take off.
so the next theme that we want to discuss, this one we've talked about a few times, but it keeps standing out to me, and I love it because it seems like it's important to Brandon, and it's always been something that's important to me, and that's just the two words that keep popping up in his novels is do better.
Yeah.
We've talked about this several times already, but I love the concept of working to improve yourself, working to create a better version of yourself than existed before now. Mm-hmm. Because that's kind of what the human experience is all about, is just continuing to improve and do better than you were the day before.
Yeah, because if you don't work on improving yourself, then often you will backslide instead.
Mm-hmm. Like
And
Shai
get frustrated
says,
with yourself like me.
Shai says, become a version of yourself that can do this. Become a version of yourself. Improve, just constantly making
Like
sure
she does that to herself, especially when she's stuck in that room, facing, knowing that, well, Frava may kill me tomorrow because she found another forger and they used, and they may take my work and go from there or
Right.
other things. And so she just has to just almost forge her own brain and go, nope, we're going to just soldier on and not
Right.
give in to the fear or the doubt or anything else.
Right. And like I said, we've already talked about that a few times, so we don't really need to spend a lot more time this episode on it. But I love seeing it show up because it also is a very hopeful concept of I'm not perfect, but I can at least do better than I am now. Mm-hmm. And just aiming in the right direction and improving yourself. It's a way to just
Improve.
make things better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but that's one of those things that, as far as, especially as humans, we tend to compare ourselves to finished products a lot. And so, like, anyone who reads Brandon and starts writing is constantly trying to compare themselves to Brandon. But they ignore the fact that Brandon's been writing books since he was 15. He's taken multiple courses and worked with some of the best people in the profession to get himself where he is now. Whereas they're at the step when he was 15, and that's who they should, in theory, compare themselves to. But even that's an unfair comparison, because that person was Brandon Sanderson, someone who seems to be immensely naturally talented for this. And so I've heard the thing that you should always compare yourself to, because everything else is a bad comparison, is compare yourself to the person you were the day before, because that's the closest comparison you're ever going to get. And if you can be better than that person, well, then you're probably doing okay.
Yeah.
You're going in the right direction. You've got a good trajectory. And
Well, you live a lot of days, and so if you're constantly improving a little bit each day, it doesn't have to be much, but you're going to head yourself in the right direction. And that's something Brandon clearly has a very good concept of, because he does it a lot.
right. Okay, now we're going to tackle the easiest, simplest question that we have on our list. What is truth?
I saw you highlight on a thing, and I was like, "Oh dear, we're heading there." Oh, okay, here we go.
I think that this is such a just discussed in such a fascinating way, because while Shy is creating, quote, false versions of things, it always has to be something that's plausible. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not necessarily this is how it happened, but it could have happened this way. And what would need to change to make this happen? And so she changes the past, but in the same way, you can look at it and say, okay, what do I change now to make this future possible? Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't have an answer for this question. It was just something that sort of came up as I was reading. I'm like, this is what they're discussing: is what is actual truth. Mm-hmm. You know, because Gautona
is a true humanities major. I'm going to ask a question I don't know the answer to.
I didn't ask the question.
I'm not asking the question. I'm highlighting the discussion that happened in the book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what is truth?
That's a hard one. I don't feel qualified to answer it.
I don't think anybody's qualified to answer this question.
Anyone who feels qualified to answer that, I'm scared of.
You need to do some serious soul searching.
But more to the point, what is truth? Okay. So she looks for a plausible thing that could have happened. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. That's a reasonable thing to look for. And so the thing that she does is she looks for what could have happened and what series of events led to that. And so you say, what is truth? Well, so was it true that that wall was a mural? Because the guy didn't actually sleep in that room, because they didn't actually put him in there.
Mm-hmm. But he was a floor above, which is connected to that wall.
Yeah,
so it's plausible that it could have been this wall.
And now that wall has a mural, even though he didn't actually sleep there. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean for what is truth? Because in truth, he wasn't there, but he could have been, and there's now a mural there painted in his style that he, in theory, could have come up with. And that was the big thing that impressed Gautona, was it wasn't a forgery in that it was a copy, because this wasn't a thing that ever existed before. Right. But she was able to will it into existence. And so you ask, what is truth? The truth is it's on the wall.
Yeah, it's there.
And I prefer to say truth is what is actually there. Mm-hmm. Because it's so difficult.
In a society and to a person who has spent their life studying ways to change the history of things, truth is a much more fluid thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, what is truth? Well, the truth is what's there, and that's there. I was able to make it so that was there. Mm-hmm. The thing I like about this also is it's kind of like, because she has the concept of making things a better version of what they are, she's essentially finding the potential that the object was never able to realize and unlocking it.
Mm-hmm. With the exception of that bed that she made into a termite-ridden, infested hole, so
and
that
then
she
the floor underneath it. So yeah, she did it to the floor and the bed.
I'm talking about her main, main drive. Yeah. But the thing that's really cool is I've had times in my life where I have felt like an abject failure, and I've had the opportunity to talk to people who see something in me that I never saw, and because they see that, it makes it seem possible for me to reach that goal, even though I don't feel like I've reached it. They see it and they feel like I have, and suddenly I realize, okay, there's another perspective. Maybe I'm doing better than I think. And that's kind of what she's doing, is unlocking this potential that isn't realized cognitively by these objects.
Yeah.
So.
But is it true?
Are we done with this?
Sorry, you just made me think about having postpartum depression, and it threw me for a second. So, yeah, because I'm pretty sure I had that with both my kids, and so that, yeah, that was rough.
I'm sorry. All right. Anyway. Well, I've got one more question that I've I thought up and I've put into the show notes, and this is a concept that people change each other. Mm-hmm. This, I think, is the story of Shai and Gautona.
Yeah.
Because both came in to the conversation very, very set in their belief of how things work and who they are and what is important to them. And but both of them are willing to discuss rationally and sort of view other perspectives. And in the end, both of them leave very changed from what they were before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's much more open-minded, and she's viewing another side, too.
I don't think either of them realize how much they're changed, but I think both of them are drastically changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gautona is actually fairly aware how much he's changed. I think actually, and this is weird because she's the more observant one. I think Shai is a little less aware of how much this may have affected her.
I can see why, because I mean she spent 90% of the book fearing for her life.
Yeah.
And working her poor little self to the bone. And so it would have been harder to be she had to be introspective about Ashravan, and so she would probably so focused on that and how to make that happen to save her own skin that it would have been harder to sit there and go, well, how am I thinking about things differently now? Whereas Gautona is still worried about everything and worrying about his position and keeping his power and Ashravan his friend and everything else. But he has that lack of constant stress that she would. And when you have stress in you, you cannot think as clearly, especially if it's sustained. So that's why I feel like she would have been less aware than he would have been.
She will be aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see her thinking back on it later and going,
particularly
wow,
as she's altering her soul stamp.
Oh, that's, because she'll have
to
add him in as the potential grandfather.
She'll have to look inside herself again and recognize. And I think, again, the reason that was possible is because both of them were so focused on being genuine with each other.
Yeah.
Neither of them was putting up a front.
The most amazing manipulation of all.
I'm totally honest with you.
But yeah, I love the way that relationship between the two of them builds. Because they develop a mutual respect. And I wish this was something that would happen more often in the world today. This is one of the reasons that I feel like discussing current issues on the internet is just one of the most counterproductive things you can do. So, but I'm not getting into politics.
Yeah.
So.
The thing that makes it interesting is the fact that it is a very dispassionate argument for the most part. When she says, I threw it in the fire, like, that Gautona has to get away because...
He's like, I'm just too angry. I can't even deal with you right now.
But notice that he does leave, and he eventually does come back. This doesn't end the relationship because they're both very much I don't know who said it. Someone said, an opinion is not very interesting because everyone has one. What's more interesting is how you got to that opinion. And both of them have their reasons for coming to their opinions, and both of them are doing a good job of approaching things to understand how they've come to the opinion. You see it in Gautona because he is studying forgery so that he can understand what it is she's doing.
Yeah.
And then she's...
to get a clear perspective on what's going on, because this is something, I'm not an expert on it, so I'm going to make an opinion. No, I'm not an expert on it, so I'm going to learn before I create an opinion.
Yeah.
And then she's clearly learning, to see things from his perspective because she has to make these soul stamps that are going to work on Ashravan, and she needs to get it close to make it work.
And he has a similar background to Ashravan, so she gets more of an understanding on his background as well.
Right.
And his
she learns about their relationship, which learning about somebody else's relationship gives you even greater insight into who they are.
Another thing that occurred to me is a lot of times, touching on the internet, blowing up in your face the topic is a lot of times there's a separation when you have a keyboard that you're typing on versus talking face to face to someone. And it's really easy to say something nasty on your keyboard compared to imagine saying it right to somebody's face.
It's the road rage effect.
Yeah, and so I didn't know that term actually for connected to that, but yes, I mean, I think that plays a big part is that Gautona and Shai are face to face, and so they don't have that separation, whereas online,
and they
there
did
is that
have
separation.
But you're right, because they did have that separation before, because she had her opinion on the Grands, and he had her opinion on her art form, and neither one had really dealt that much with the other.
Right.
And also, like, he even got her nationality wrong. Like, he said, like, that there was some other...
The Jindo.
Yeah, he's like, oh, they're with they're your same tribe, or what, I can't remember the term that he used, but, like, she's like, no, we're different people.
I mean, it's the same comparison, like, when you talk about there's a relationship between Japanese and Chinese. Yes, there's a distant root centuries in the past.
And Japanese does use some Chinese characters, but they're not Chinese.
It's a completely different culture.
Oh, yeah.
At this point, and so like it's understandable that she was upset because
a little bit irked about that. Yeah.
Well, because humans naturally try to categorize things to make it easier for them to understand. Because if you're able to create a basic pattern, then that's sort of an easier starting point rather than starting from square one with everything. Yeah. But the problem with that is you end up making assumptions about individuals that aren't necessarily true.
Yeah.
It's the problem with the stereotype.
Yeah. Well, and what I like about that from her perspective, where it annoys her that he did that, at the same time, she castigates herself a little bit because when she sees the blood sealer, she thinks of him as an old man. And after seeing him a couple times, she realizes, no, he's a young man. That's just a common mistake that people make because of how they look. And she's realizing, no, I shouldn't be the one
to judge
fall
him
for
way.
that. And
because as open-minded as she is, she's still susceptible to it.
Yeah, I thought that was it's a line that didn't need to be included, but I thought it really helped lend a lot to her character because it shows that she's still fallible in this. She's not high and mighty about it.
Right.
I liked that. It was very good.
I agree. Guys, this has been a heavy episode.
Oh man, yeah.
But I've really enjoyed it.
I want to ask one more question.
Okay.
Do you think we'll ever see Shai again?
We will.
I saw this note in the
Yep,
show
I've
notes
actually got this in the show notes.
That's
actually that leads directly into where I was going next because
nice
I was going to talk about how does this book influence future Cosmere novels.
The entire time.
Yeah, just own it. All right, because Brandon has said that. Oh, first off, somebody asked Brandon, what happens to Shai after this? Is she going to go after the Imperial Fool? Is she going to try and find him? And Brandon has said that Shai did eventually track down the Imperial Fool. He says, now, these are at two different points, and I think this is the earlier one. He says, I won't write a sequel story for The Emperor's Soul, but you haven't seen the last of Shai. You will see cameos, and it's entirely possible I'll sneak one into a book. So, and I think that's a smart idea. The reason he said he doesn't want to do a sequel is the exact term he said is, I don't want to George Lucas this.
Shots fired.
Where basically he doesn't want it, because the first book just turned out so well. And he doesn't want to add extra stuff that actually ends up taking away from the original. But he has said this is not the last you're going to see of Shai. She'll possibly show up in like the Elantris sequel. He hasn't said whether she becomes a world hopper or not. He's been intentionally cagey about this, but unfortunately with Brandon, intentionally cagey doesn't mean yes, this is happening or no, this isn't happening. It's I don't want to tell you yet.
Or I'm still deciding and I don't want to.
And that's the other possibility.
So personally, I think she should eventually become a world hopper. But
she would be a great part of the 17th Shard.
She'd be fun.
So this is the thing that's interesting because her magic probably doesn't work anywhere else. There's a case to be made. Maybe you could do some forgery with a different power source. If you could do it right, maybe, but it's probably unlikely.
That's actually one of the other.
It seems like you'd have to change all the marks that you do for the forgery, because she says it's based on her
my
homeland.
Pawn.
Yeah, my pawn.
Well, and that only works on Elantris. Like, Elantris is the one that goes through that. Or Cell. Sorry, dang it. Yeah, Cell.
Right. Actually, Godless Rebel mentions she'd be an amazing Lightweaver. And Brandon has actually been asked what Radiant Order she would be part of. He said she would probably be an Edge Dancer, but the second possibility would be a Lightweaver.
Edge Dancer makes sense, because Edge Dancers are all about remembering.
And she's very good at that.
But he's also said, it depends on what sort of Spren bonded with her.
Yeah.
And I could see a Cryptic absolutely loving Shy.
Well, there's one more thing that could happen that Brandon has also been cagey about. People have asked Brandon, could Seon bonds, like, is that similar to Nahel bond? And, like, what would happen if someone with that bond went to Roshar? And he has actually said that it would probably grant some form of surge binding powers because of how similar the bonds are. And I would love to see, like, she somehow gets a Seon, somehow gets to Roshar, and she's her own little flavor. Because that would just make total sense for Shy to not play by the rules.
Yeah.
Right.
But the more importantly, I think she makes for an interesting world hopper, less because, this is very Brandon, less because what she can do with magic, and more about her approach to life. It's very much like Kelsier talks about to Vin. There's an aura about a Mistborn and how they carry themselves. It's beyond the magic. She very much has an aura about her, very much that goes beyond the magic and her ability to read people. Breeze had the same ability. He didn't need to push on people to get them to do things for him. And I think her way of approaching things, of making herself a person who can deal with the problem, would be something that would be very powerful in the Cosmere, no matter where she went.
Right.
She doesn't need the power, because she'll find a way to get what she needs, regardless.
Yeah, Brandon has actually said that forging in the way that she forges wouldn't... Like, there are ways you would need to get around the requirement of the investiture added and everything. Because people keep asking about would she be able to end up somewhere else. And Brandon, the response tends to be along the lines of, there's a problem to it, and you're looking at it from the wrong angle. So I don't know exactly what he means, because Brandon's really, really good at talking about out both sides of his mouth. But I find it interesting. He has said, though, that she will show up in other books. And I personally would love to see her as a part of the 17th Shard.
That'd be fun.
Also... The other question, so somebody asked him again about more Shy story, and this response really stood out to me. He said, I do have a second story outlined now, but I don't know when I'll have time or would have time to write it. So we'll see if I can make that happen or not. I think it's likely, but I can't promise it. But it's equally likely right now that I will outline a new graphic novel series, as that I'll just do a story, but I can't 100% promise. So I wouldn't mind seeing another graphic novel about Shy. I think that'd be cool. But
a graphic novel in particular with what she does
would be interesting.
Yes.
Because you'd get the visuals.
And those got to be some pretty intricate visuals.
But he has said specifically he's not planning on another story that is her story. She may show up and be a character in other stories, but there's not going to be this is Shy's story, you know? So I'm actually, even though there are certain things that I'm just like, oh, I want a sequel, I want another one. This one, I'm okay with him leaving it alone and just being done.
It felt pretty satisfying.
It's very, very complete.
That I remember having that with a specific anime called Outlaw Star. It was on Toonami, where I had never really watched a series to its completion, and I watched the full season of it. And they'd always end it with "to be continued," and then on the final episode, it ended with "it's like see you later." And I'm just like, wait a minute, what? And go on the early, 2000s internet trying to find information about stuff in Japan. Good luck with that, for the record. And found out, no, that was the last episode, and it crushed me because I'm like, no, I want more. And then I paused, and I'm like, where would they go?
Yeah.
Like,
they kind of...
They wrapped up all the loose ends. You'd have to come up with new loose ends.
Have you guys seen Supernatural, the TV show?
I've tried. I just couldn't get into it.
So like
I've
really
seen the gifs that come from people who are fans of Supernatural,
and those are excellent.
The gifts are amazing. So like if you want any kind of gift, just look for Supernatural one. It's there, and it's canon. But like the crazy thing with that is like season 5, the apocalypse happens, and yet they still have stuff happen, and it feels like it almost is being stretched too far. Like, and I try and catch up on it every once in a while, but I'm still like, I have a harder time staying into it because they went and had the apocalypse, and yet they keep having to find bigger bads, or then they find smaller bads and other things, and it's like, but you already hit that note way up there in season 5.
This is also called the X-Men problem. They had the apocalypse, and now we gotta keep going.
Yep.
So yeah. So anyway, that was a nice comparison. If anybody else is, I'm sure lots of people have seen Supernatural. But and Dragon Ball. Oh my goodness, Dragon Ball.
No, keep making Dragon Ball episodes. I need more of those beautifully animated fights. Don't listen to them.
Oh, the Frieza fight was so painful. Anyway.
I need more.
All right. Well, we should
Splice
probably
needs a little more juice.
No more splice cream for you.
Oh, but I like splice cream.
Anyway, we should probably start wrapping up. So, as always, we want to thank our patrons. Y'all are the ones who make it possible for us to keep creating new episodes, for us to do the giveaways, for us to just keep this crazy podcast around. The show, as always, will continue to be free for everybody, but if you do want to support us, even with just $1 or $2 each episode, please go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. When you become a patron, you will get immediate access to our Discord channel, where we have got a budding community. It's growing, and it's just really fun to see new people pop up, especially because Discord has fun little intros whenever somebody joins the server.
They're fun.
And people sometimes have a hard time living up to them.
It's true. But it's just great because you can chat about the Cosmere, you can chat about the show, you can continue the discussion. So, we're done talking about right now about the Emperor's Soul, but there's still more to discuss. And if you want to continue the discussion, head on into the Discord and talk with people. There will be plenty of people willing to share their opinions and ideas and thoughts. So we would love to have you join us. You'll also get bonus content like the 6-7, which is a collection of 7 pieces of content that we find for each episode. Basically, what we're doing is we're posting those on the alternate weeks to the episodes. So we record on Mondays at every other Monday, and the alternating Monday is when we post the 6-7. So that way you don't have to go a full 2 weeks without anything from us. So
yeah.
And of course, you'll get early access to any bonus content we produce. We've got the call-in show that we're going to be having on our year anniversary once again in 4 weeks. And you'll be able to call in and talk with us and be a part of that. We would love to have you there. And beyond that, they're going to be entered into our patrons are immediately, automatically entered into our giveaways. Those giveaways are free for everybody, and they're not exclusive to patrons, but our patrons will get 1 automatic entry. Typically, we've been allowing everybody 3 entries, 1 through each of our social media channels. But for our patrons, you will get 1 entry automatically, and so to get the other 2, you just need to enter 2 times on social media. Let's see. Of course, as we get more patrons, we're hoping to record episodes more frequently. We would love to get to a point where we can do these episodes every week. We've already invested in new microphones, but hopefully we'll be able to get even better software, hardware stuff to make it easier and sound better for you. Mm-hmm. Now, we also want to just thank the patrons that we do have, and this week we've actually got several new patrons that we want to thank. So thank you, a special thank you to Joshua P., Andrew S., Beth K., Jake H., and Jonah H. To all of our current and past patrons, once again, thank you. You are amazing. It's because of you that we're able to keep making new episodes. So just thanks so much for being here. Now, in the future, we're planning on saving up aluminum foil hat theories and questions from our listeners. And we would love to hear from a lot of you. Now that we have hit our latest Patreon goal, we are planning to periodically do what we're calling aluminum foil hat episodes, where we take a look through the mailbag from our listeners and discuss your theories about just what's going on in the Cosmere. Did a side character from one of the books seem like there might be more to them than first appeared? Do you have a prediction of what's going to happen in an ongoing series? Is there a topic you'd like us to discuss a bit more in depth than we were able to in the past? Is Brandon actually Hoyd from the future and he's traveled back in time and landed on Earth to warn us about the ultimate fate of the universe? Let us know what you think by writing us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com. Of course, we've all got our own personal I can't say personal projects properly. We've all got
for Amy, it's true. She does have her own personal
products.
Amy's is products. That's true. We all have our own personal projects that we're working on outside of the podcast. Jordan, why don't you start us off this time?
I normally, this is where I tell you to go to twitch.tv/splicestream, but I actually am going to be on someone else's podcast this week. As those of you who are regulars know, I do a bunch of Super Smash Brothers content centered around amiibos, and I'm going to be on a Super Smash Brothers podcast called Smash Bros. Cast. It's kind of a generic name. And I always have a hard time remembering it because I think I'm making up how generic it sounds. But it's branding, and it's pretty good when you think about it.
If you look up Smash Bros. Cast or Smash Bros. Podcast, it's probably going to be one of the first ones that comes up.
Oh, it's on the front page, let me tell you. They know what they're doing. No, and so they're inviting me on to discuss amiibos with them because it's a part of the Smash world that they don't tend to focus on. And so if you want to just go over there, I think I'm going to be on with them on Saturday. I'm still working out the details, and I don't know when they publish their stuff, but I'm going on with Josh, or N64 Josh, and yet another Josh, and Nightcrawler are their names, and we should be having a good time. So if you just go to N64 Josh's Twitch stream, twitch.tv/N64Josh, I think I'll be on with them on Saturday. I'm still working out the details. I'll let everyone know in the Discord when I find out.
And then also, we'll put out something on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, how about you, Amy? Where can we find you?
I am on social media stuff. Yay! I'm on Facebook at Coincidence Cosplay and Props, on Twitter at Coincidence Cosp because my name is too long, and on Instagram at coincidence underscore cosplay. Currently, I'm kind of stressed out because my machine broke, my sewing machine, or tangled. Anyway, so it's in the shop for 2 weeks, and like all of a sudden I have all these sewing things that I want to do. So I'm like, no.
It's okay. It's not like our entire Discord has gone nuts over your plushy D20s.
Yeah. So if you look at our Instagram, all those feeds, and you saw me like with the most recent post where I'm with those little D20s in front of me, those are the ones that I sold. Well, a local game store is gonna sell them for me, and I posted that picture. And everybody's like, "Oh, I want one." I'm like, "These actually have a destination," and my machine broke as I was making them, so I cannot make any more. I know you did. So I'm sitting there going, I suddenly have all these people going, "I want one," and I'm like, I cannot make them right now, like at all.
Let's have a philosophical discussion on what dibs are worth. It turns out absolutely nothing, Bill.
I'm disappointed in you, Jordan.
Anyway, so that's what I'm trying to do non-sewing stuff right now because I can't. So I'm going to work on Queen Eleanor's wig after my most recent thingy. Anyway, so that's stuff.
Cool.
Sorry, wait, who's Queen Eleanor?
Brave.
From
her
Brave.
mom.
Oh,
the
right.
Queen. I do not blame you. I forgot her name too.
I thought she was a bear.
She turns into a bear. I'm
For
doing the
good
human
portion of the
version.
movie.
The trailer was very misleading.
Indeed.
Aye.
Now, as for me, I've got a bunch of board game reviews up over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. Also, if you're interested in board games, you're going to want to follow my social media, my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram feeds at Innkeeper's Table, because at the end of this month, I am going to SaltCon, which is an enormous board. I say enormous. It's the biggest one in Utah, but it's not It's not, what's it called? My gosh, I can't remember.
Gametopia.
Gen Con. It's not Gen Con or Essen by any means, but it's still, there's going to be about 1,800 attendees. We're going to be playing a bunch of different games, new ones, old ones, classics, and I will be posting about that entire experience on my social media channels. So again, check those out at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeeper's Table.
Oh, wait, speaking of board games, that's our next stretch goal for Patreon.
That is our next stretch goal. The next stretch goal we've got is we are going to live stream a playthrough of Mistborn House War, which is a board game based on, you guessed it, Mistborn, specifically the Final Empire. In the game, players are playing as the leaders of the different noble houses in the Final Empire and trying to solve problems being things like Ven or uprisings from the Ska, and wheeling and dealing and trying to ally together and betray each other and end up with the most favor from the Lord Ruler at the end of the game. Unless everything collapses, in which point you want the least favor from the Lord Ruler because he's been overthrown and nobody likes him.
It's amazing. It's a game that has competitive cooperation. It's very unique.
So this is going to be interesting because I haven't played it at all yet.
So we're figuring out the best way to lay out cameras and stream that properly, but we will have that set up and
we'll figure it out as soon as you guys reach that stretch goal for us.
Exactly. So
we're not going to figure it out a moment sooner because it's a lot of work.
It's true. Anyway, if you have enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. It makes a huge difference for us. It helps people to find the show because if they search for Cosmere Podcast, we're going to be more likely to show up for them. Or if the apps notice that they've been listening to other stuff about the Cosmere, we're going to pop up and it'll say, hey, check these guys out. They're a lot like the kind of stuff that you listen to. So if you go over to iTunes and you just give us that 5-star review, it would be absolutely wonderful. And of course, please share the show with other Brandon Sanderson fans that you know as well.
Yes, don't be shy. Bare your soul.
Say nice things about us. Make us feel good.
Inflate our egos. Yay!
Because we do read all of the reviews that are posted, and we take them to heart. So we would love to hear from you there. Now, before we close, guys, any final thoughts about what we've talked about tonight, about the Emperor's Soul, about Cell, about all the deep stuff that we delved into tonight?
I talk to little children way too much because I have not had deep philosophical conversations for a while.
Are you kidding? Children are the ones to ask what's truth. Adults
That's
avoid
true.
it like a plague.
Oh my goodness.
But then again, they also ask like, what's poop?
Or, Mom, why does this not work? Because you're doing it the way I told you not to do it. That's why it's not working. Repeat ad nauseum.
If I had to say one thing about this book is that it's better the second read, which is, I think, the best compliment you can give to a book.
That's true. That's a good one.
But more importantly, it's actually got me excited for the concept of what will go forward on the world of Cell, which, given that they killed off the only character I liked in the original Elantris,
no names.
I need it.
Yep,
but if we could have just killed those two children, I would have been fine.
Anyway.
They're annoying, Bill.
How about you, Amy?
That was my talking to little kids. That was my other thought. So
let me clarify. The two children, I did not mean her children. I meant fictional children in the world of Elantris. I just want to be sure I'm not actually encouraging real murder.
Thank you for clarifying that because that could have gotten messy. Anyway, for me, one of the things I love about this is it's so simple. This is one of the most simple and complex books that Brandon's written in all of the ones that he's done, and it's one of his shortest. I feel like this is one of the best examples of good writing that Brandon has put out. It doesn't have a lot of action like Mistborn or The Way of Kings or anything like that, but it's just so rich and juicy and delicious.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going to something a little lighter that has less soul-crushing things like Six of Dusk. Oh, wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, our listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere else you want to look for podcasts. It's on just about all of them. Just do a search for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. For our next episode, we are going to be heading to a new shard world in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, simply called First of the Sun, as we discuss another of Brandon's shorter Cosmere works, Sixth of the Dusk. I'm so glad I didn't stumble over that. Yes. So make sure to join us in chat in 2 weeks on March 4th, 2019. In the meantime, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.